Right, okay, gotcha. Wow, looks
Amazing.
amazing.
Well, I think we've got a few that have joined us now, so I'll probably kickstart and get us going, because I'm really keen to, obviously you can see we've got a fabulous panel here, so I'm keen to kind of get the first bit out of the way so we can get chatting to our wonderful panel of experts ASAP. But firstly, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself, because otherwise I totally forget to do that. I am Gabby and I am the head of commercial here at Three-Sided Cube. And for those of you that are joining us that don't know much about Three-Sided Cube, we are a software development agency based on the south coast of England in a place called Bournemouth. And we're a mission-led organisation. So our mission here is to change millions of lives for the better. It's what motivates us at Three-Sided Cube and what all the teams sign up for when they join the Cube family. And we achieve that mission by building tech for good. Because technology is a really powerful tool that has the potential for huge impact and reach, but the technology itself is agnostic. The technology doesn't care if it's used for good or for bad. So we choose to work with organizations that are aligned with our mission and have the expertise, the audience, the reach to basically develop those projects where technology can be a really key resource in enabling more impact and ultimately deliver real positive change to people's lives. So being in that for good world, our team is extremely passionate about protecting people and our planet. And, you know, really that's what led us here today, chatting to you all and this wonderful panel here today about the circular economy. So just before we dive into chatting to everyone and hearing more about all of the wonderful things that you all do, I just wanted to briefly touch on what the circular economy is and a little bit more about why we're so eager to chat about this topic today. So what is the circular economy? You know, a circular economy is an economic system aimed at eliminating waste and the continual use of resources. So it's this regenerative approach is in contrast to the kind of traditional linear economy, which has a take, make and dispose model of production. So the circular economy is based around the concept of reducing waste, promoting recycling and the reuse of those materials. And we've worked with clients to help create solutions on this very principle, namely with one of our clients called Polytag. So we're currently working with them on a project with the Welsh government, which is all around developing a deposit return scheme that encourages consumers to recycle effectively by rewarding them economically. So that incentivized purpose behind it. Predominantly helping to get the plastic back into the plastic value chain. And that further that dream of what we're all here to talk about today, which is the dream of the circular economy. So projects like these have given us a real insight into the amount of effort and the amount of stakeholders that are involved in making these kind of step changes. You know, and that's driven a lot of passion from our team and a lot of opinions about ways to do it. And actually one of the things that we've done off the back of that is create Ignite, which is our own campaign, which is about creating a community and a space for collaborations, conversations, events, research, you name it, around how technology can support sustainable living and create a better future. Because essentially there is no one single solution that will solve this problem. It's going to be a collaborative, collective approach. And that's when we're going to see real change happen. And I'm going to not talk too much about any of that stuff because Rich is on the call and he will have his Ignite hat on and his Three-Sided Cube hat on. And I'm sure he will fill you all in on more of this detail as we dive into our panel discussion. So that's just a little bit of a background, really top level stuff about why we wanted to cover this topic with you today and why we've invited this panel of experts to kind of fill in the gaps for us a little bit more. So just before I dive into those introductions, which I'm sure everyone is dying to know who everyone is on your screens, I just wanted to say that there will be a chance for questions at the end. We will save a bit of time for that. But please do pop your questions in the Q&A channel that's at the bottom. As you go along, just whenever you think of them, pop them in. And if the conversation is flowing and I can squeeze them in a nice segue, I will do my best to do so. But don't worry, we will try and get around to everyone's questions and save that time at the end. So don't worry. Right, so enough of my voice. Let's get everyone familiar with the wonderful panel. So firstly, thank you all for joining us today to join this conversation. It's greatly appreciated. What would be fantastic is to do a quick whiz around, get some introductions going. So those of us joining today can hear a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about how that relates to the circular economy, which obviously we're all here to dive a bit deeper into. So Jo, with your wonderful background of organised products, maybe you could kick us off.
Hi, my name's Jo Chidley and I'm the co-founder of Beauty Kitchen.
Oh.
As you can see, we're a pitch company, sustainable beauty products in the world. You might think, why is that? Well, all of our packaging is in reusable packaging, and we're on the cusp of certifying through the Cradle to Cradle programme, which is one of the foundations of the circular economy. And what that means is any of the products that we make actually either the ingredients come from a renewable resource and the packaging comes from a renewable resource. So it means that those resources stay within being reused again and again and again. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much. And just in case, because I think you dropped out just at the start there, it's Jo, and Jo's from Beauty Kitchen, just in case anyone didn't grab that, because I think you just dropped out slightly, but we caught the rest. So thank you so much. And then Steve with another wonderful, actually you've all got wonderful backgrounds, so I'm going to stop saying that. Steve, maybe you could, apart from Rich, who doesn't. So Steve, maybe you could do a little intro as well and tell us more about yourself.
Sure, I'm Steve Haskew from Circular Computing. We're a UK-based global reseller of remanufactured laptop products. Laptop technology and PCs generally have a very linear behavior, and we're hell-bent on changing that behavior. So we have a circular economy-based business. We are working with UK public sector, helping them try to align their ambitions to become a circular economy state by using our technology to help them achieve that. So the lessons they can learn by using our products hopefully can spill into other areas of industry, which is exciting for us.
Amazing, thank you. And Liv?
Hi everyone, I'm Liv. After working more than 10 years in the fashion and textile, I've seen so many bad things that I was like, okay, now I really want to have like a positive impact. So I decided to start working as a consultant and educator to help the brands, the suppliers, the schools, like to go towards like a positive path, and especially in circular economy.
Amazing, thank you. And last but obviously not least, Rich.
Hi, I'm Rich. I'm the MD at Freestyle Cube, and as Gabby said, we do lots of work in the environmental area and any for good area really. And I was really involved with the work we did with Polytag on the deposit return scheme, and was just kind of bowled over by the impact we could have by making more, heading towards a circular economy, and really kind of what really kind of brought it home to us was when we were looking at how you can the waste involved in recycling itself and the amount of waste that occurs there. And then when you it was one of those things where you kind of turn over a rock and you're like, oh my God, wow, there's a lot we need to do here. So, and it's no one organization or one sector is going to do it on their own. It's going to require a whole heap of different people and different stakeholders to get involved with it. And so that's why we launched Ignite. So it's kind of a bit of a pet project for me. So one I'm super interested in. So really excited for this.
Amazing. Well, thank you all. It's great to get to know you a bit better. I think, what occurred to me when you were all talking is you're all from such, different industries. I think what would be really amazing to start with is just a bit more about what the circular economy means to you and your particular business and industry a bit wider, because I think that's a really interesting comparison across what you're all doing. Liv, do you want to kick us off with, you mentioned about the fashion industry and it being such an interesting area?
Especially it's such a polluting area as well. So there is a lot to do in fashion. It's really, I mean, every step of the fashion creation and the whole process needs to be rethought actually, because when you design something, to really like keep that in mind, the recyclability, the traceability as well, to be more transparent. So it's really from design to supply chain, material, packaging, end of life cycle, like, and as well guidance, because people need to be guided, because a lot of them have no clue of what they really buying, what they really, how they can return the garment at the end. So it's really, everything has a huge impact. And that's why, as you say, collaboration is actually really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, how does that differ, or how is that similar for circular computing and the industry you work in?
I think there's some key drivers at the moment that are showing their face. If you look at resource efficiency being a key driver for the circular economy, you know, particularly in our world where technology now is going to be rolled into pretty much everything that we use in our daily life. They're all going to be kind of like seeking to use the same components from the mines from where they come. So the maths and the science suggests that by 2030, we're going to need 3 planet Earths to fulfill our consumption habits. So our big driver is to change how people think about their consumption habits, and then by so doing, use what's already been made. So in laptop technology, 80% of the carbon emissions that are made happen in the production phase of its life. So to put that into a sort of a scale, if you think of 3 laptops would be a ton of CO2, and a ton of CO2 would fit into a 3-bedroom house in mass, roughly. So that by reusing what's already made, you're able to stop that event from happening. So not only do you preserve resources, you're able to have a significant effect on climate. And so 2021 for us this year, with us hosting COP26, we're using that as the driver behind resource efficiency, which then sits at the center of the circular economy, sort of a backward chain, if you like.
Amazing. Joe, you're nodding away. So I mean, like,
yeah.
Is that the same for the beauty and cosmetic industry?
I mean, when we set up the business, we wanted to set up a sustainability company. My husband and I are co-founders of Beauty Kitchen, and we have been in the health and beauty industry, and that industry is just not known for sustainability. The other great thing, though, about our industry is, apart from some of the things that can be changed to be more sustainable, because it's fast-moving consumer goods, we can actually bring the circular economy into people's lives without them probably even knowing what it means. And sometimes I call that sustainability by stealth. So even if you're a consumer that's not really thinking about sustainability, but we all know that we're all early adopters of this. We know at some point everyone will be engaged because they have to be. So the quicker we can get circular economy type products into people's hands, the easier it is then to explain. So something being in a plastic single-use bottle or a reusable aluminium bottle brings that to life immediately.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think that's really interesting when you think about what the challenges are, you know, what those challenges are in terms of stopping a more circular economy. Because when you talk about it and you think about it, it's such an obvious solution, and maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, but you think, wow, you just do that, then you just don't do that. But I think when you start talking about these things in terms of like how consumers react and everything, you know, what are the challenges, and what do you see in your industries and your businesses as being those big challenges that are stopping the circular economy being more widely adopted, I suppose? Joe, do you want to start us off? Because I think you were touching on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other guys will agree here. When you develop products that fit into the circular economy, because they are generally going to be from a renewable resource or they're going to be reused, there is a longer term investment that is all on all of those components, whether it's beauty products to laptops to t-shirts. If you're producing something more sustainable, there is a higher, longer term investment. And that puts a barrier immediately on any business sense, particularly if you're a linear business that is only focused on making profit. So we're a B Corp certified business, and generally any business that's in the circular economy, even if they're not B Corp certified, they work not just within what profit they can make, but also how does that impact the planet and how does that impact the people on this planet, whether that's employees or whether that's their customers. And that does come at a higher cost. However, we know that although it's a higher initial cost, that the longer term businesses tend to last a lot longer, and they're also doing the right thing. So the question really is, why wouldn't you have a circular economy business? However, there isn't any advantages at the moment. If we just take the UK as an example, so, you know, if we take basic tax principles like VAT, you still have to pay VAT on hiring clothes. Now, that just doesn't make sense to me, because if you're hiring clothes, you're reusing them. So why should you have to pay VAT on every single time you hire it out? So there's some system changes in overall infrastructure to encourage more businesses like ours that I think need to be looked at first. But that's not really why I'm in it. I'm in it to make, you know, great beauty products and make them more sustainable.
Absolutely. And Steve, I know when we spoke briefly before, that's something that you're very passionate about, because you're also working on a lot of like policy changes and also looking at sort of promoting the benefits for businesses in terms of using your services, and actually how your products are so highly specced and there's such benefit in them using that. So maybe you could what are the challenges and what do you find in terms of that?
Our biggest challenge is one of perception. So whoever is looking in today, we'll all have a drawer somewhere at home. I have one. It's full of wires and some tech, and everybody's got one. Everyone will say they don't have one, but especially if you're a man, everyone has them. So when you talk about stuff that's being made and used once before, immediately your head takes you to this place. That for us is the primary thing that we have to get over. When people think of a second-hand piece of equipment, they think of the thing that they're disposing of. So, you know, we want to drive out the term waste. Waste shouldn't exist in the English language anymore. It is just resources of tomorrow is what it is. So we've got to drive out language. We decided to basically pull our own socks up. So we are a carbon zero organisation. We have an annual carbon audit. We are driven to reduce our emissions from our operations, which is a really difficult thing to do when we move product around the world and we rely on freight and planes and things like that. But year on year we reduce our carbon. We have sort of offset programs. We invest in reforestation. So, for instance, for every laptop we sell, we plant 5 trees. This has a positive effect upstream on future use of products. So, like Joe was saying, we try and go, look, we're not going for cheap. We are going for best value, and best value for us looks like things that are of value to us. So, zeroing out carbon, zeroing out waste. Make a common sense business available to large users of IT. And so to get them to use our technology, they've got to be risk-free. So in the land of secondhand, if you like, on eBay or something like that, you know, it's buy-side risk. So you put a place in your head, okay, I can buy that for brand new for £100. I'm prepared to pay 30 quid for it, let's say. And that's how the land of secondhand works. So as a business, we're kite mark pending for our innovation. Like Joe said, we had to invest many millions of pounds into a remanufacturing facility. We've created a new grade of asset class in our part of the world. So you have brand new, you have refurbished, and then you have this new class called remanufactured. So we sit on a steering committee of British standards. We help the world understand what remanufacturing actually is. We don't have all of the answers, by the way. We're still learning on a daily basis, but we come at it with we want to have best practice. And best practice is adopting a reuse model.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. Rich, it just occurred to me when you were mentioning about Polytag and the incentivization of the deposit scheme, in terms of, is that a challenge for, consumers? Do they need incentivizing? Because is that the driver?
I mean, well, there's multiple levers that are going to be used to make this happen. The consumers are a big one, but I think you've got to be really careful not to just point the finger at brands. Are very good at pointing the finger at consumers and saying, well, they don't want this stuff. There was I can't remember, the lady from Coke, Bea Perez, who came out and said, well, our consumers love plastic bottles, that's why we produce plastic bottles. And there is some truth to that. If the consumer, if they didn't sell any plastic bottles, they would put Coke in something else. They're not doing it out of spite, they're doing it because that's what their consumers are buying. But there's a way that you need to it was interesting what Joe said about making it invisible to the consumers. Like you've got to remove the barriers to it, and that's what I think government and brands and people can do to help consumers make sustainable choices. And there's a big education piece. A lot of the research we've done shows there's a massive intent and action gap. So if you ask people if they want to behave sustainably, absolutely, I want to behave sustainably, until it comes to actually doing it, and then they don't, and it's working out why that is. And a lot of the time it's because they don't know how to, or they think they're doing something that they're doing the right thing, and then they're not. And recycling is a classic one of it, that everyone chucks their stuff in the recycling bin and thinks they've recycled, but they haven't done it quite properly, and it causes more pain than it's worth. So it's a really delicate one with consumers, but it is really important not to make them feel browbeaten by it, because pointing your finger at somebody and telling them what to do isn't necessarily the right way to get them to do it.
Yeah.
Somebody said to me a few months ago that what you don't need is, you don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. You need millions of people doing it imperfectly.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and it's the same actually with organizations as well. Like you say, we're all, you guys are early adopters, you're way ahead of the curve on this stuff, and you will have it's the 80-20 rule, right? You will have an impact to a certain amount of people, but really to make the type of impact, the type of shift that's required to hit any of the targets that you hear governments come out with or world leaders talk about, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take the really big guys who are motivated by money. And you're right, Joe, that there needs to be a look at that. It's really interesting that over the last 12 months, I think it is, in ESG investment, which is the kind of ethical investment, is the one investment area that's really gone through the roof. People are really piling into that, and that's because they're sustainable businesses which are going to stand the test of time, and that's where people put their money in times of crisis. So that's a really positive thing that's happening, is that if the money starts going that way, that's where people do tend to follow. It's quite an interesting one. I went to a thing slightly off topic, but on we do a bit of work in deforestation with the WRI, and I was out at a conference where they were all the kind of world's deforestation guys were out there talking about the problem of deforestation, and they were all these environmentalists and NGOs were there. They were really, it wasn't the most uplifting thing I've ever been to be honest, because at the end they were a bit like, kind of, it was quite like God. And then I got back, and about 2 weeks later I went to an economist event. I was a bit like, I had books, and I was like, well, this might be interesting, but I didn't quite know what it was about. And it turns out it was a load of like hedge funds and investment banks and people like that, and they were talking about the risk of climate change to their asset class. And suddenly this was going to cost them some money, and they were like, hang on, we've got to do something about this. When they can see half of California on fire, and they're like, I've got property there that I need to protect. That's, unfortunately, horrible as it is, that's when you start to see the real kind of shift.
And that's where I think the linear economy and the circular economy, there's a convergence that's happening, and Liv will be able to talk about that with fashion, because you've got you've got fast fashion, and then you've got the designer fashion. But I think that convergence and that tension that will happen, because the money does, unfortunately, we are traders. Human beings love to trade. That's what we do. Yeah. And as soon as we can understand how we can do that better together, then obviously the world will be a better place.
I think going back to what you said about imperfection, lots of people doing things imperfectly, Joe, is that I actually believe the step between linearity and circularity is a semicircle. It's okay to get involved. You don't have to have all of the answers. Just know that the answers will come to you if you're prepared to take that risk, and that's what you need to do. I think you're right.
Liv, in terms of fast fashion, I mean, it's just such an interesting industry. Yes. The challenges around that must just be phenomenal. Can you share some of your experience and insights?
Yeah, and completely. It's like everyone's responsibility, as you say, because the consumers as well, but they don't really know what to believe anymore, because you have greenwashing. So brands need to be more transparent. And I think we really need, as a big challenge, what would be needed would be transparency and traceability. Because when you ask suppliers, sometimes they don't even know where's the fiber coming from, who made your clothes, where all those things, you have so many information getting lost along the way, and it's so many different steps in fashion. So sometimes that's why as well it's so confusing for consumers, because they're like, oh yeah, but this is recycled material, but recycled material isn't really sustainable. It really depends on so many other factors. And it's really a lack of communication, a lack of information. And it's really for me, traceability is so important.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys wanted to talk about. How does technology help the circular economy? And Liv's just hit it straight on the head. It's this traceability. That's how tech can leverage the circular economy.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of, tech's also really good at educating without it feeling like shoving something down people's throats as well, in terms of being a support mechanism. Because I think there is absolutely it is a huge education piece around this, because, when you go on your journey as a consumer, I mean, brands are different, but just from my experience of being a consumer, it's a very difficult thing to navigate, because you know what you want, but finding whether it's the right thing and how it fits in that sustainability and with your morals and ethics, it is quite complex. So in terms of technology and innovation supporting what you guys do in your experience, I mean, it would be amazing to kind of touch on that, as Joe so perfectly segued that in for me. Thanks for that, Joe. It's making my job easy. Liv, as we were talking about fashion, in terms of traceability you mentioned, but particularly around fashion, how do you see technology and innovation supporting that?
It really starts from the very beginning, because for creation, for example, technology is such a huge help, because you're able to design 3D, you're able to see less samples, you amend it online, you see how it looks like, the material, everything. It's so fascinating. As well, for all the fabric thing, you waste way less fabric. You don't have all the shipment. And it's so good already in the term of the creation part already to have this. And then with different kind of tech, blockchain, all those kind of things as well, you're able to trace everything and to really keep that information along the chain. Because what really shocked me in fashion, it's sometimes you design a collection which is really sustainable, taking care of all the points, and you really put a lot of effort and attention into it. But then when it goes to the marketing team, sales team, sometimes they don't really have that information. So they're not really able to give that pass on to the consumer as well, which is a shame. So it goes both ways, because sometimes you have no effort made and a lot of things are told about it that are not true. And then it's the opposite, where you can create a lot. And I really feel like for this, yeah, like all the tech for creation, but all the tech like blockchain for traceability is super good. Because towards the end, we should just be able, like as a consumer, when you buy something, you shouldn't do a huge investigation. You should just be able to kind of like scan something and have all the information from like the very beginning. And it's something we're really missing in fashion. We have it in food. You have way more information. In beauty, way more now as well. But in fashion, there is nothing. And it's really missing because for any consumers, it's like, you don't have time to like research online for so long. And you don't know if you're able to trust or not, what you're being told, is that really true? And I think technology is going to be something really, really helpful for it.
It's really interesting, all the consumer stuff we've done with fast fashion. One thing that always comes back from a consumer point of view is that they want the same sort of traffic light system that you get on food in fashion. They're like, why isn't it just on the label? You know, red, green, amber. It's the same as salt, fat, sugar in food. Why can't we have the same kind of information like that on fashion labels? And it's a lot of it is to do with there just isn't the same rigor in the supply chain monitoring. It doesn't feel like there is, and certainly that's where I think technology could have a huge benefit, is in that supply chain in fashion of kind of source to store. And I've never really got my head around exactly why it's not there, because it is there in food and it's a similar kind of I know it's not exactly the same, but I guess it's like the consumer demand, you know. From a government point of view, there's a big health implication of people eating badly, and that health implication costs the government money, whereas at the moment people wearing unsustainable clothes doesn't really cost the government that much, or not that I'm aware of anyway. So again, you know, that's an interesting thing. It's quite interesting with the technology side of it as well. And you know, Steve, you could probably speak to this. A lot of the tech, it's not new technology that we need for any of this. No one's got to invent a new way of doing stuff. It's just implementing existing technology in the right ways. And then it's more, the innovation comes really in regulation and how you motivate people to demand it, really, I think.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, I remember when there was mainframe. A mainframe was a big kind of computer. Imagine the cloud computer in the basement of a building. That's how computing used to be. And then the PC came along, and the software engineers, they designed stuff so that the hardware had to be faster every year or every other year. And that created a linear buying habit in technology. That's kind of how it evolved. And strangely, what happened was there was a paradigm shift in our industry in about 2013-14, where the cloud and broadband and wireless technology became the master. The software's job then, the engineers had to make the software more efficient to get data out of the cloud, down a pipe, through the air, onto a device, be it a laptop, a tablet, or a phone. So there was a huge paradigm shift, which then went, use the word agnostic again, Gabby. It doesn't really matter what you could look on a TV, on a phone, or on a laptop. You're looking at stuff that's stored somewhere. So the next question is then, okay, well, to change the buying behavior of the user, you have to enable them to feel not compromised by their decision to use. Now, in other words, if you ask them to get involved in, say, a pair of second-hand trousers, hand-me-down jeans, as I would give my brother when I was younger, he'd be the kid running around with holes in the knees. He didn't feel particularly good about his trousers, whereas I was the kid with the new trousers. So what we have to do with the circular economy business is to make people feel they're getting more than they have gotten before, with a view that by so doing, they're actually doing the right thing. Doing good business is good business after all. So there's no downside to sustainability, so long as you're not hoodwinking the customer. So in our world, remanufacturing is taking a product. We all use laptops, and we all know we hit them around, you know, when we put it in and out of bags, on desks, off desks. Each individual laptop has a unique existence to its next one or the one before. After 3 years, they're kind of done. That, you know, you can get 4 years out of it at a push, but they've been used a lot. And like a car, they need to be serviced. They need to be rested, they need to be taken apart, they need to be rebuilt, and then they need to be made into a nice new condition again. And the remanufacturing part of the circular economy, the bit between used and reused, that bit is the enabling part. Without that bit functioning, the rest of it falls. The rest of it is just recycling on the one side, and someone trying to do good on the other side. You have to have that middle piece that fits, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd love to just add to that. So the way that we've, so our reusable packaging, we are using an app for the customer journey, yeah. And it's our return, so we've got Beauty Kitchen, which is the beauty brand. We then have Return, Refill, Repeat, which is our reusable packaging program. And Beauty Kitchen is the first customer to that reusable packaging program. Unilever is the second customer to that reusable packaging. Because as you quite rightly said, Rich, if you don't get the bigger guys, then the impact on sustainability is very small. And what we are doing is when the packaging gets returned to us, we then have a bottle washing facility. We have the protocols in place to be able to wash that and then get that bottle or packaging refilled and sent back out to the customer. And with the QR code technology and using blockchain technology, you can follow the journey of that piece of packaging from the moment that the aluminium was actually made before it even gets made into a bottle. But then comes in the marketing story, which hasn't happened yet. It's just occurred to me that this is what we could do. So I could then say, the Queen used this bottle when you look at it on the app, or Kardashian used this bottle. Now, I'm sure there'll be copyright and, you know, lots of marketing budgets. But when you actually then, people look at this and they go, it might have a dent in it, but it's the 150th time that this bottle has been used. And it then gets customers engaged with the packaging, and they actually want to have it reused. They don't really want a new one anymore. And that's a really clever, that's not my area, that's my husband's area, the marketing side of things. But if we're all doing it in different industries, I just think that we are on that, you know, hell of a roller coaster when it comes to this tipping point. And technology is the part that is pushed us to the top of the roller coaster. I just get shivers when I'm talking to you guys at the moment, thinking of how exciting it is.
Oh, that's lovely.
That is cool.
Rich, that really made me think of blood, and in terms of that journey, in terms of tracking and being able to show users the impact, which you'll probably be able to talk about a lot more, but also that moment of like smugness, like when their people are at that.
That's
that moment of like, oh, I'm part of something and this is cool. Like that's actually a really great driver in getting people to do something good again.
Just to explain the moment of smugness, that's it's an internal we do, as I said, we do bits in sustainability and all the rest of it, and what you've got to do is capture that point when people are feeling most pleased with themselves about the thing that they've done, and then really celebrate that moment of what we call the moment of smugness, when they're most like, yes, I'm really cool. And that's when you want to share it wide, but it's understanding when those moments hit that you can really kind of latch onto, because it's a really good reinforcer. Lots of endorphins involved with being smug, so that's kind of it's a real driver for that. It's really cool, but it's really interesting, as Gab said, the understanding users. This is purely from a kind of from our world, which is software development and trying to make behavior change and user interactions. Showing people the impact of the action they're taking at the point they're taking it is again another massive driver for it. So Joe, that's that idea of this is the provenance of that the reuse of that thing, and having that displayed to the user, and the kind of if you got to that thing of 100, and that's a lot of stories. That bottle's been on a journey, right? It's seen a lot of things, and that's an amazing thing to think about how to show that to people. That's really cool. I love that. I think it's a brilliant idea.
I mean, amazing. I feel like we've come up with some really cool things already. So that's really I'm super conscious of time, and I'm super conscious of the Q&As getting nice and full. So I might just start switching across and asking some of these exciting questions to you all for your your thoughts. Let me just have a look. We've actually got one here about predictions around cryptocurrency and blockchain in the future. I'm presuming specifically around the circular economy, because that's where we all sit. But we have mentioned blockchain a little bit already. So, you know, it sounds like you all feel that that's a strong option for the future.
It's interesting. It's certainly interesting. From a blockchain and cryptocurrency, it's important not to completely converge the two, although the biggest blockchain application, well, to be honest, the only really big one that's had loads of impact in the world of blockchain is Bitcoin, which is obviously a cryptocurrency. You wouldn't predicate the circular economy on Bitcoin. It's far too energy intensive. So actually crypto from a sustainable point of view is kind of, and I almost hate to say it because I can feel my Twitter my Twitter getting smashed to bits as I'm saying it, but any currency that's based on consumption is madness to me at the moment. So I don't know why you would do that. And I know that fiat currencies use energy as well, but that's not the point. If you're going to replace it with something, you should replace it with something that isn't using the world's resources from where I'm sat. But that's not what blockchain is necessarily. So that's kind of crypto. Blockchain itself is really interesting, and it's great from that provenance point of view. It does sometimes feel to me like it's a real sledgehammer to crack a nut, and it's a very, very complicated and expensive way of proving provenance. And I think the example of, as I said before, the food industry or coffee is a really good example of showing that fair trade coffee idea that shows that provenance of people. You can do that without a wildly complicated technological implementation of it. That's not to say there isn't room for blockchain in the world. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, soapbox is welcome at these talks. You can really get on it. So we have one here, which is really interesting question. What advice would you give to fresh circular economy obsessed MA students who are currently looking for employment opportunities to advance circularity, either through business consultancy and or policy? So I think that's a really interesting one. We've got maybe Liv, even, and Joe, because I know, you know, you've got a lot of Liv, you're consulting, and Joe, you've obviously started this amazing business based on that concept. So any advice?
I think the first thing for that person would be to collaborate and to have such a good network, because what we tend to forget, like sometimes we stay a bit too stuck within our industries, but something that would be a waste for us could be a resource for someone else, and vice versa. And I think for the circular economy, it's more about like collaborating, sharing all those things as well, and to all go towards that direction together, and not just to do your thing on your side and be like, okay, I'm in this industry and that's all. Like, it's really getting inspired and sharing things and really collaborating.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think there's a lot of public sector bodies. So here in Scotland, for instance, we have what's called Zero Waste Scotland, and that's publicly funded, but it doesn't sit within the government, the Scottish government or the UK government. It sits outside of that. So, and it looks at all different industries. And obviously the purpose of it is to create zero waste, which is part of the circular economy. So there is a lot of public sector growth out there as well. So anyone that's a student that's looking to get some hands-on experience, I think the public sector can definitely offer that. The other side of the coin is, you know, think of something that you want to start up yourself. One of the things that we are currently on Beauty Kitchen is we're on the NatWest Climate Accelerator, which is the free business accelerator. If you go onto the NatWest website, you'll be able to find information. You don't need to have a business, a trading business. It can even just be an idea, and they will coach you. They've got specialists in that area that would actually help bring your idea potentially to market if you were thinking that you wanted to be, you know, an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And that leads really nicely into another question that we've got here.
Okay.
Are governments being lobbied to subsidize green friendly businesses? I think we've actually sort of mentioned this a bit, and I know Steve, you do a lot of work in this area, so I think it sounds like there is change happening and policy changes, but just any insights in terms of how that works and how much that's happening.
I would reflect on what Joe and Liv just said. So I think there's a number of things happening. One is the world of sustainability is becoming amplified in its noise. And so if you're leaving university and you're entering into that space, be careful to choose the lane that you want to be. Otherwise, you'll find yourself dragged around the market a little bit. I feel, and even as someone that's been in the business for many years, I still find myself you fall into a rabbit hole, and you can lose a day or two just being interested in the theme. So in terms of governments, the 2021 represents such a landmark year for this country, for Europe, and for the world. And I mean this because of this. One is we left Europe in obviously the end of last year. That event is going to trigger a new environment bill. The new environment bill obviously centers around climate change, but within that, you've got resource efficiency, waste, the two key components for the circular economy. You also have water, nature and biodiversity, and air quality. I'm just looking at the slides. I'm actually having a presentation tomorrow about just this. That, as well as COP26 in November, which will be a focal point. So I predict that the government will come out of COVID, come out of the pandemic, come out of Brexit, and in the summertime, they'll look to each other and say, right, in 4 months' time, we've got COP26. Where exactly are we? And the window between now and November is so exciting for those people who want to commit. You can't, in my opinion, you can't go at this subject matter half-hearted. You have to go at it with all the energy that the day can give you, particularly if you're in the public sector space, which is known to be a very big ship and sort of difficult to move. But once you start moving it, you find that people do want to create a sustainable future. They do want that. They just don't have the tools in their arsenal today to allow them to do that. So they're learning as well as everybody else. But once you start to build a network of people that believe in the things that you believe in, then the magic starts to happen, because you haven't got to keep re-educating all the time. You get people helping you along your way.
Absolutely. No, that's really interesting. And again, these all seem to be flowing into each other really nicely. So thank you everyone for asking questions, which just so nicely flow. I love a flow. Does the panel have suggestions for inspiring stakeholder buy-in for existing brands? And how do you promote the benefits and get back in from a board? So I think we've kind of covered this a bit, but does anybody kind of have any suggestions?
So we're a B Corp certified business. If you haven't heard of B Corp, you can go to their website and it will tell you what it's about. But basically, you're talking about people, planet, profit, and you have an independent certifier that recognises you run your business in that way. You do not need to be certified to get lots of information about how to sell those details to your board or business. There is lots available on there. There's slides that are freely available. And it just, because obviously B Corp use that as a bit of a selling tool for their certification, really. So I think it's a great place to start because it helps you understand sustainability better. Even though B Corp's not just about sustainability, but it's about a sustainable business model that works within the circular economy, I think that gives great resources.
And I think as well to add to that, like it's kind of common sense as well, because it's so many benefits out of it. Like it's the reputation, it's like what you're doing for the planet. It's like, it's so many things. You're saving on resources. You like, it's just everything. And it should
Why
align
wouldn't
with
you?
values. Well, exactly.
Absolutely. I like that. Why wouldn't you? Another nice flow. One of the problems, this is a question, not just me, one of the problems with our current model is that businesses which create waste do not bear the true cost of their pollution and waste. Could the circular economy model help ensure businesses bear the true cost, or is it better at preventing the waste in the first place, or could it do both? So I think that's quite interesting coming off the back of like the governance, where there's all of this why wouldn't you? And actually this cost benefit, and I think we touched on some of the economical benefits, but actually, is there any thoughts around actually bearing the true cost of the waste that businesses make?
I think that it's complicated. So I think as if you look deep into the habit of consumption and production, you have to put the weight of use and reuse onto the consumer. The manufacturer will, if the consumer stops buying, the producer will stop producing. That's a fact, because otherwise they're just overproducing. The burden of waste should be to zero out the word single use. So, you know, when you consume something, you should know what you're going to do with it when you've finished using it. That should be part of your behavior pattern. That's the bit that I think needs to change. And then there could be a collaboration between you and the supplier. If the supplier wants that product back for remanufacturing, or for you know, I'll say decompose it, to take it apart and then, you know, to rebuild it into something else. There has to be that collaborative piece. You can't have, I'm the producer, it's not my problem, and the consumer saying, well, I could do what I want with it. It's, you know, there has to be this. I'm designing something for reuse and I'm buying something for reuse. The common theme there is reuse. So what is that bit?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because the idea of the circular economy is to obviously eliminate waste, but to get there, you've got to show the value to everybody. So to Steve's point, you know, the producer's got to see the value in producing something that eliminates waste, and so has the consumer. And I actually think the true cost to the business will become a reputational thing. So if we can get to a point where we can show the true cost of waste, and really, you know, and show that on the packaging or on a general report or whatever it is, the cost of it will be to that to the people that aren't doing it, to their reputation based on that. And if we can educate people to understand the value of that, and that you know, that reputational risk comes with an economic impact, I think that's where you would see a shift.
Amazing. I think we've got time for one quick question. One more. So we've got a question here that super interested in how tech can support the circular economy. You've touched on three-sided cubes work with Polytag, but is there any other examples of apps or other technology supporting the circular economy? So quick fire, anyone got any?
I mean, what we use with our reusable packaging is QR code technology. And the thing is, a lot of the times with the circular economy, it's not about inventing anything new. It's really about leveraging what we currently have and finding out how that fits in with a reuse or a renewable resource model. And there's a variety of different things, you know, that are out there. But that's one example that we use.
I think tracking and traceability is an interesting concept. You get drawn into conversations about GDPR and about human rights and this sort of thing, which is a bit of a drain on energy, if I'm brutally honest, because it is the wrong thing to be thinking about. But I do respect the fact that there is privacy. You know, where there's technology, whether mobile phone technology, or, you know, anybody in the world will know where I am within 3 feet of this. So the technology exists to know where stuff is. Yeah. It just depends how it's deployed and how that's controlled, I think.
Absolutely. No, I think they're really valuable points. And hopefully that gives everyone some answers to their questions. There was quite a few of the similar questions, so hopefully that covers everything for you. And I think just to expand on that last point slightly, you know, we are here at Three-Sided Cube, and we over the last 11 years, we're here to support organizations and movements with this kind of change. And if you have a problem, particularly that these questions were alluding to, or you're looking to solve something, you know, please do reach out. You can get us on our website or get in touch with Rich or I on LinkedIn, and we would love to chat about how we can support you and collaborate to kind of achieve those goals and build tech together. So do feel like you can do that. Just one last thing from me. I just wanted to say that our next event is a pretty special one. So it's slightly different from our usual Tech for Good talks like this, because it's actually all focused on Ignite, which I mentioned at the start, and obviously Rich mentioned a little bit more. And this event is going to be on the 25th of March. So put it in your diaries now, people. And it will focus on the opportunity technology poses in enabling brands and retailers to promote waste reduction, reuse, return and recycling. So all the things that we've kind of been delving a bit into today. We're going to be joined by even more experts, which we're so lucky to have all these wonderful people joining us all the time. And that panel will be led by brands and technology experts. So it's going to be that nice mix of both sides. And currently speakers include representatives from Innocent and WWF. So we've got a really cool lineup for you coming up. So yeah, we will be sending further details, don't you worry, out in some follow-up. It's slightly more proactive group, so there's going to be lots of participation in group ideation workshops and lots of ways of examining how technology can drive future change positively. So we'll send out that information, but it's a really key one, so do look out for it. And then finally, I just want to say a massive thank you to all our panelists. Like, just wonderful to have you today, and thanks for sharing so openly about what you guys do and your experiences and all your knowledge with us today. And thank you to everyone that joined, that dialed in from home. There is a light at the end of the tunnel that we could do a real life event soon. Come on, June.
Imagine.
Fingers crossed. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for all your questions. Stay safe, keep smiling, and we look forward to seeing you all really, really soon. Thanks so much.
Great job, Gary.
Thanks,
Well done.
bye. Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.